Hello everyone, welcome to today's story. Tonight, we witness the darkest moment in Lytuna's life. Baby Henry, once torn away by her ex-mother-in-law, is finally rescued by the police. But the nightmare does not end there. Henry collapses and is rushed to the hospital. The doctor's words cut deeper than any wound, and Lytuna falls unconscious before Alex's eyes. Will Henry survive this battle between life and death? What truth did the doctor reveal that shattered Lytuna completely? And in this storm of despair, can Alex truly save both mother and child? Stay with us until the very end to uncover the answers. Don't forget to subscribe and help us reach 1,000 followers. Your support keeps these stories alive. The night was drenched in rain, the ambulance siren slicing through the darkness like a cry from fate itself. Inside, Lytuna held Henry tightly, her trembling arms clinging to his fragile body as though sheer will could keep him alive. His breath was shallow, too light to reassure her. Alex sat opposite, his hands clenched, eyes darting between Lytuna's pale face and the child's stillness. The flashing red lights painted their silence with urgency, each second heavier than the last. When the doors burst open at the hospital, white corridors swallowed them whole. The scent of disinfectant filled the air, cold and merciless. Nurses rushed forward, lifting Henry gently but swiftly from Lytuna's arms. She stumbled as though a part of her had been torn away, calling his name under her breath. Alex steadied her, his grip firm, his voice low. "Stay strong. He needs you." Yet even his words trembled, betraying the storm beneath his calm exterior. Moments stretched endlessly until a doctor appeared. His footsteps echoed down the hall, each one like a drumbeat against their chests. He stopped before them, gaze steady, face unreadable. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The hospital lights flickered slightly, casting shadows along the wall, as if the world itself hesitated to hear what he would say. Lytuna's nails dug into her palms. Alex's jaw tightened. The air was heavy with dread, and in that silence, the story of their lives seemed to hinge on the next few words. The doctor's voice came low and measured, but the words cut like shards of ice. He explained Henry's condition in fragments: oxygen deprivation, irregular heartbeat, fragile recovery at best. Each phrase was a blow, a quiet thunder rolling through the sterile air. Lytuna's lips parted, but no sound escaped. Her eyes widened, brimming with disbelief, as though her very soul was refusing to accept what her ears had heard. The walls seemed to close in on her. The hum of fluorescent lights turned into a deafening roar, the floor beneath her feet trembling as if the earth itself could not carry her sorrow. She swayed, clutching at her chest. A moment later, her body gave way. Alex caught her just before she fell, his arms cradling her as her head lolled against his shoulder. "Lytuna," he whispered urgently, shaking her lightly, but she was already lost in the dark of unconsciousness. Behind them, the rhythmic beeping of the machines monitoring Henry pulsed in uneven intervals, sharp, insistent, merciless. Each sound was both a reminder of life and the threat of its loss. Nurses hurried past, their voices clipped, issuing orders, but all Alex could hear was the echo of his own heart racing. He lowered Lytuna carefully onto a bench, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. For the first time, fear gripped him in full. He had promised himself to be her anchor. But how does a man stand against waves that threaten to swallow everything he loves? his chest tightened. Above the chaos, one thought crystallized. He could not, would not let them slip away. Alex sat with Tuna's unconscious form, resting gently against his side, her breath faint, her body limp as if all strength had been drained. Beyond the glass, Henry lay surrounded by machines, his small chest rising with effort, wires clinging to his fragile frame like vines choking a young tree. The room was filled with the constant hum of ventilators, punctuated by the irregular beep of a monitor. Every note a reminder of how close life clung to the edge. Alex's gaze was torn between them. The woman who had given her all to protect her child now collapsed in despair, and the infant whose fragile pulse tethered them to hope. Inside him, a storm raged. Rage at Jiang Tidieu for dragging them into this abyss, fear of what the next hour might reveal, and beneath it all, the question that refused to leave. Was he strong enough to carry them both through this? He pressed his palms together, fingertips trembling. Memories flickered. Tuna's laughter when Henry first grasped her finger, the quiet evenings when silence felt like safety. Those moments seemed so far away now, replaced by the sterile cruelty of the hospital. He drew a breath, deep and deliberate, forcing his shoulders back. "Hold on," he whispered, not sure if he was speaking to Henry, to Tuna, or to himself. The fluorescent light above buzzed softly, casting a pale glow across his face. Alex stood in that corridor, a man fractured by fear, yet bound by love, realizing that his greatest battle would not be against others, but against his own breaking heart. When Tuna stirred awake, her lashes fluttered like fragile wings against the storm of reality. Confusion clouded her gaze before memory struck. Henry, gone, taken, rescued, yet still fighting for life. Her chest tightened as she gasped, clutching Alex's sleeve, eyes wide with the ache of remembrance. "I left him for only a moment," she whispered, voice breaking like glass. "Just firewood. Only firewood." The hospital walls did not answer, but Alex's arms encircled her, drawing her close. He murmured steady words, though each syllable trembled with the weight he carried. His mind burned with the image of Jiang Tidieu, her face etched with bitterness and regret, cradling Henry with a possessive tenderness. That duality, love twisted by resentment, haunted him like a shadow. Outside, the rain lashed harder against the windows, nature itself echoing their turmoil. Tuna pressed her forehead into Alex's chest, the sobs muffled but unrelenting. For her, memory was no longer a story of the past, but a wound bleeding into the present. She remembered the rejection, the cruel words of being cast out, the endless nights of raising Henry alone. Alex's own fury threatened to break loose. Part of him longed to condemn the woman who had caused such pain, yet another part, quieter and more dangerous, whispered that grief had poisoned her into cruelty. Between vengeance and compassion, he felt suspended in a silence too heavy to shatter. In that sterile corridor, Tuna's tears mingled with the sterile scent of antiseptic. And Alex realized the war they fought was not only for Henry's life, but for the pieces of themselves that grief had tried to claim. The door creaked open, and two officers stepped quietly into the corridor, their uniforms damp from the rain. One of them, Min, carried a notebook, his expression sober. He nodded politely before speaking, his words deliberate, as though each sentence weighed heavy. "We questioned Jiang Tidieu," he began. She confessed to taking Henry. She also spoke of the past, things you may not have known. Tuna's body stiffened. Her eyes searched the officer's face, desperate, afraid. Min's voice softened, but the truth was merciless. She admitted driving you out when you were pregnant. She arranged another marriage for her son, believing you were unworthy, and she blames you for the imprisonment of her son. The words cut deeper than any knife. Tuna's hands trembled violently, clutching the thin blanket draped over her knees. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Only silent denial mixed with sorrow. Her past, once buried in silence, now clawed its way back to strangle her present. Alex's fists curled until his knuckles whitened, his jaw locked, veins visible beneath his skin. He wanted to rise, to shout, to demand justice, but the sight of Tuna, fragile, broken, unraveling, anchored him in place. His fury had no outlet, only a burning heat caged inside his chest. The officer closed his notebook gently, as though sealing away the confession. "We will continue to investigate," he said, "but for now, your son is safe." Safe. The word hung hollow, for safety meant little while Henry lay behind glass, his future uncertain. Alex placed a steady hand over Tuna's, grounding her trembling fingers. In that moment, he understood. Sometimes the deepest wounds were not carved by strangers, but by the very bonds meant to protect. Through the glass window, Henry's tiny chest rose with fragile effort, each breath a fragile thread holding him to the world. The machines blinked and hummed, their sounds weaving a strange lullaby of survival and uncertainty. Tuna pressed her forehead against the cool glass, her breath fogging the surface. Her whisper was barely audible, trembling like a candle's flame in the wind. "Henry, my baby, come back to me." Her body shook as if her very bones remembered every loss she had endured. Alex stepped closer, his presence a shield against the crushing emptiness. He placed his arm around her shoulders, steady and warm, his touch quiet but unyielding. No words were needed. In the silence between them, grief and love braided together like roots clinging to fractured soil. Henry stirred faintly, his small hand twitching, a movement so delicate it seemed almost imagined. But Tuna saw it. Hope pierced her despair like the first break of dawn after an endless storm. Tears streamed freely, her hand flattening against the glass as if she could will her strength into him. Alex's throat tightened. He leaned closer, speaking softly, almost to himself. "He's fighting, just like you." His reflection blurred against the glass beside hers, two figures bent toward the fragile life between them. In that moment, the sterile corridor felt transformed. The harsh hospital lights softened, the rain outside eased. For one suspended heartbeat, there was no past, no accusations, no shadows of betrayal. There was only the fragile promise that even in the darkest night, life still reached for the light. The doctor emerged once more, his shoes clicking softly against the polished floor. His face was unreadable, carved in the restraint of someone who bore too many burdens. Tuna's breath caught in her throat as she clutched Alex's hand. For a moment, the entire corridor seemed to hold its breath. He spoke gently, words heavy with both warning and possibility. "Henry is stable for now, but his condition remains fragile. He will need careful monitoring. The next days will be critical." Relief and dread collided in Tuna's chest. tears slipped freely down her cheeks. But this time they carried not only grief, but the fragile shimmer of hope. Alex nodded, though the lines on his forehead deepened. He squeezed Tuna's hand firmly, grounding her in the present. His gaze drifted to the child beyond the glass, so small, yet carrying the weight of generations' mistakes. In that stillness, Alex felt a quiet revelation. They could not rewrite the past, but perhaps they could choose how to carry it forward. Tuna leaned into his shoulder, her body exhausted but her heart refusing to surrender. "As long as he breathes," she whispered, "I will fight." Her words were both vow and prayer, carried into the silence like smoke rising into unseen heavens. The corridor lights dimmed slightly, casting their shadows long and uncertain. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving behind the hush of night. In the pause between fear and faith, their story remained unwritten, lingering like dawn waiting beyond the horizon. And in that fragile stillness, a truth lingered. Sometimes, love is not the end of suffering, but the strength to endure it.
Henry từng bị mẹ chồng cũ Tử Na và Giang Thiên Diệu bắt cóc, nhưng may mắn công an đã giải cứu thời, tưởng chừng mọi thứ đã khép lại. Cậu bé rơi vào tình trạng nguy kịch, phải nhập viện trong ánh sáng lạnh lẽo và hành lang bệnh viện. Tử Na tuyệt vọng, còn Alex cố gắng tìm điểm dựa cô. Khi bác sĩ bước ra tin dữ sức khỏe Henry khiến Tử Na ngất xỉu lại tại chỗ. Alex vừa hoảng loạn vừa kiên cường vững tinh thần, nhưng lời thú nhận từ bà Giang Thị Diệu về quá khứ khét sâu nỗi đau. Tuy vậy, ánh mắt và hơi thở yếu ớt của Henry vẫn là ngọn lửa hy vọng mong manh cho cả hai bám víu để bước tiếp.